Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The good thing is I have a powerful panel today. And today we're talking, if you're new to Clubhouse, just scroll up. You'll see the people on the top of the screen. We're talking about people, partnerships, profits, and the thing that we call new urbanism. It's a community wealth initiative. And we're doing something crazy today. Not only are we doing Clubhouse, but we're doing LinkedIn Live. So let's go. I have a panel today. We have Mr. Adagori, we got Terry Wasocha, we got Mr. R.W. Bray in the house. So just to frame this and to let you know, my name is Alan Thornton. I'm the founder and CEO of Money for Your Mission, and also irrationally passionate about funding causes that change our communities. So I want to, first of all, frame this for everybody. What we're talking about today is something that is going to help minorities gain equity in this great country that we live in. It's an initiative that's over $270 billion across the US, gonna create over 2.7 million jobs, 270,000 new minority-owned businesses in 270 different communities. If you don't know, there's kind of a theme of 270. So we'll let you know how all of that works, but before that, let's get into the panel. Mr. Adagori, can you tell people who you are, what you do, and how you're gonna help them make money from home?
Thank you, Alan. Everybody, my name is Oswaldo Guillermo Eguigorri. I'm originally from Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico, and I am Director of Financial R&D for Grant Source. A little bit about me. I served my time in the Army with the 82nd Airborne Division, paratrooper, airborne all the way. After the military, I did sales for a while, and after a course in time, I decided to go back to school, got my degree in finance and risk management, and the universe brought Alan and I together, and here we are, you know, doing what we do for community and ourselves.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Thank you for that, sir. Mr. Wasocha, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hey everyone, my name is Terry Wasocha. I support Grant Source in that I am the Director of Financial Education. And so that's what I do for the company. Full-time, I'm a CPA and a Director of SEC reporting for a Fortune 50 company here in Houston. And you know, my background, I'm a CPA, master's in accounting, majored in economics. So I'm very much a numbers guy. I'm passionate about putting puzzles together and making sense of numbers so that, you know, everyone is benefiting. And so working with Money for Your Mission and Grant Source, this is just a great opportunity for not only myself to support this team, but to support communities out there. And so I'm excited about putting all these ideas together and seeing them come to fruition.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And Mr. R.W. Bray, the one, the only in the house, looking like $1 million, man. Those of you on Clubhouse, if you can't see Mr. Bray, he looks like $1 million. Mr. Bray, tell us who you are, what you do.
And with intros like that, I need a hype, man. I am glad to be on the call. I'm over economic development for 100 Black Men in the Houston Metroplex area. I've been in politics for over 15 years now, ever since Hurricane Katrina kicked me out of my hometown, New Orleans, moved to Texas and became a politician. Just really trying to make sure that I redefine what it means to be a public figure. And for me, that means being very active in creating communities that are not only sustainable, but they're spiritually led. They're focused on moving upward. And for me, that means that it's less about the government helping us and more about us helping ourselves. So I'm excited to be on here. You guys will probably learn more about me later.
Excellent. So what Mr. Bray said is we're not looking for reparations. We're looking for proposals in our presentations to be heard, and that's what we have today. So what I want to frame is let's start at the macro level, because I want everybody to, if you're new and you're just coming into the room on Clubhouse, we're talking about new urbanism, people, partnerships, and ultimately profits. But it's a community wealth initiative, and I want to help frame everybody. Mr. Adagori, can you tell everybody, just so they can have a frame of mind, what is new urbanism?
Well, Alan, new urbanism is a planning and development approach that centers around the pedestrian in a way. It centers around bringing community together. They call it new urbanism, but it's not really new. It's a concept that's been around for quite a while, particularly in Europe. You see it quite often. But here in the United States, it was something that was picking up in around the 70s, the 80s, and it died down. Uh, and it's coming back again as more and more people are becoming familiarized with its benefits. Like I said, it centers the approach centers around walking, around pedestrian. And from an environmental perspective, that reduces carbon emissions because if everybody walks, they promote walking, more people walking, less car traffic, less emissions. And it's really also pushes to foster community and culture.
Excellent. We all want to do it for the culture, man. So doing it for the culture and helping the environment, helping people. Let's talk about the partnership standpoint. And even before partnerships, Terry's our numbers guy. He majored and is really big on economics. And if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So how do we make money, Terry?
Yeah, so the way that we're structuring this is going to be basically following the model of a real estate investment trust, right? And so that's a company that holds real estate assets and then pays out the profits from those real estate assets to its stakeholders, right? And so the way that we're modeling this is we're going to have the stakeholders, we're going to have the corporate investors, high net worth investors, but also community members, which would be local residents that are living in our community developments. And then the business owners that bring their small businesses into those communities. They're all going to be stakeholders in this real estate investment trust, or what we call a community reinvestment trust, right? And so as a stakeholder, if I live there or if I bring my business there, I'm actually receiving dividends on a regular basis that ties me into the community and also lets me to benefit from the upside and take that equity and pass it down for generations.
Wow. So we're talking purpose with profits, right? And giving people, for those of you that don't know, in our great country, there was a concept called 40 acres and a mule, and it never happened. So this is a way to actually do that. And I want to ask Mr. Bray, but before I do that, for those of you in Clubhouse, if you would like more information, you see Luisa on there, you can ping Luisa and DM her and get the guide for everything that we're talking about. So you get a visual, you'll see how we're gonna partner together. So Mr. Bray, let's talk about that, because new urbanism isn't new, right? There's money out there when it comes to grants, government contracts, but specifically, we wanna partner talking about the people, not just with ourselves, but with government leaders, with celebrities, athletes, local leaders, real estate developers, even street hustlers. But we want to find money that's already there. Tell us about the monies, the zones, the Reinvestment Act. People already know, but just give them a little context.
Yeah. So one of the things I often talk about whenever I'm talking about intentional communities is using opportunity zones and reinvestment incentives as a way to fuel that community. And so for me, what that means is, if you will, every state has sort of reinvestment zones. And they may call it different things. And in Texas or Houston specifically, they call it TERZs. But it's called different things across the nation. And so I'm just going to call it reinvestment zones, just for time's sake. And so every city has reinvestment zones. When I say every city, that typically means the cities of a higher population than a rural area, right? And so these little zones, reinvestment zones, are dictated by the mayors and the governors, and they work out where these reinvestment zones will be. However, they are capsulated, and so to really optimize the potential, you could use the federal idea of opportunity zones. Now, respective to federalism, opportunity zones have been given to every state to manage, to draw out, and so the governors draw it out. So once you have these opportunity zones, you can, if you will, imagine a heat map. You can graph those together, and you can really look at where can I take get the most bang for my buck. If I'm talking about opportunity zones, I'm talking about tax incentives, specifically for investors, right? And then there's all kind of terminology we need to start talking about when you talk about opportunity zones. We're talking about opportunity funds, what the specific incentives are, what the guidelines might be, and that's a totally different conversation. But ultimately, what it does is that it allows an investor to invest in sorry about that, guys, to invest in a particular part of land, and then that particular part of land will have certain incentives for any individual, any investor that wants to give to that particular area. Now, what's interesting though is that when you're talking about a TERS or a reinvestment zone per city, it's not necessarily an incentive for the investor. If anything, it's the incentive for the area, because it is meant to beautify whatever area of the city you're in. And so if it's a zoned area, what it saves is the taxes that area gives annually. And so if there's an area that gives per home $1,500 in taxes, what will happen then is a percentage of those taxes are then saved for beautification or what they call reinvestment. And so what happens then though is that individuals who live in that area have the opportunity to start their own little zone projects. And that feeds into construction. And that feeds into the opportunity of businesses, say for instance, restaurants and banks and things of the like, to be more likely to move into those areas. And what happens is that particular zone then increases, not only in this market value of the homes, but it increases in the traffic that comes to that area. Because if you have restaurants, your sales are going to increase. If you have banks, people are going to be moving around. If you have shopping areas, then you're going to have people who are going to be there spending money. And so sales taxes increases, and it has other opportunities as well. So ultimately, when we're talking about intentional communities, it's impossible not to talk about opportunity zones paired with specific reinvestment areas per city.
So we're gonna dig down a little deeper into that. For those of you that just came into the room, we're talking about new urbanism, people, partnerships, and profits. And we have Mr. Adagori, we have Mr. Wasocha, Mr. Bray just rocking the mic. So stay tuned, right? Just stay with us a few more minutes. You don't want to miss, because we're really getting into some meat. So Mr. Bray just talked about our opportunity zones. Mr. Wasocha talked about how we're going to structure things. And I want to talk about now we've talked a little macro, right? And all these things have been around for a while. Let's talk about how things are different. But first, in these communities, we talked about restaurant. What else is in these new type of communities? Mr. Adagori, if you could just enlighten us. What is in these communities?
Well, what you'll see and what it's new urbanism is recognized quite a bit for is mixing land uses. In other words, it's maximized the potential for land use, and it does so by mixing commercial with residential. An example, you will see residential buildings where the first 2 floors are reserved for commercial, and then 3rd floor and above, you have residential homes. They're very compact designs, and because it can the maximizing and the land use, it provides more affordable housing choices. Also, it creates walkable, bicycle friendly neighborhoods, and that are very distinctive. And they, again, big thing is promoting culture, and it goes along with what Terry is talking about. Where the culture comes, hey, let's pull together and realizing if we pull together and use the power of community, we can all win and go a lot farther.
So that's where we talk about partnerships. So for those of you that have joined us, opportunity zones aren't new. New urbanism isn't new. Pulling in intergenerational communities isn't new. Why this? Why now? So give you a little history lesson. Back in 1909, right? And I'm an amateur on the history, but the concept is real. And the end of this story, there was a community called Black Wall Street, and it was one of the largest thriving minority-owned, Black-owned communities in the country. Unfortunately, they had their own businesses, their own banks. Money circulated in that community for about a year before it left. Unfortunately, in the year 1921, which is actually 100 years ago, there was a huge race riot in that community, and the whole thing pretty much got burned down and never was rebuilt the same. So what this plan attempts to do, we will be successful with each and every one of your help. We are partnering to pull all of our dollars together to build what we want, which is Black Wall Streets in 270 communities across the US, Canada, well, mainly the US. And then we also want to be able to give equity back to those people who never saw equity in their life, right? And I want to go back to Mr. Bray, and we'll talk to Mr. Wasocha on how that money comes together. But talking about the culture, and thank you so much for that, we're going to build this together, and it's the only way that can happen. Why? There's opportunity zones already, Mr. Bray. How come that money just continues to stay within one group and minorities get kind of locked out?
Yeah, I'm trying to fix my camera here for you guys. Repeat the question real quick.
Yeah, so Mr. Bray is fixing his camera. He looks like $1 million for those of you on Clubhouse, but that's not what he was talking about. The question was, why does this money that for opportunity zones, for tax credit, for government contracts, it seems to stay, and it never, even this, right, we're in a pandemic right now, we're in Black history right now, but there's a ton of money, $2.2 trillion just got passed, even PPP money. That money never seems to really come down to the minorities, and especially talking in intentional communities.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, so, and I'm just being respectful, but let's say, ultimately what happens is the rich get richer, and not necessarily because they're doing anything illegal or scrupulous, but they just know the law. So they know the ins and outs of how to take advantage of these incentives that are offered to everyone. It's just that minorities don't really do it. So let me give you an example. Like right here in Houston, there's an area that's called the Galleria area. And there's another affluent area like many, like Memorial City and River Oaks. And all these different areas have reinvestment zones. Now, it's not like these areas are truly struggling. And I'll put that out there. They're not areas that you would consider challengeable. However, the issue is that every area can ask to be beautified, and every area should, especially if they care about their community. Now, there's another area in Houston, it's called the Third Ward. So also another area called the Fifth Ward. And all these areas have their own stereotypes. So in the Galleria, that's the place that's popping and booming, right? And in the Tray, which is called the Third Ward, called the Tray, there's a lot of abandoned buildings, useless lots. It's things, for example, 25% of the area in the Third Ward is actually owned by churches that are sitting on land that is unused. That's a huge amount. Anywhere between 25 to 30% of the Third Ward is actually tied up in probate. So it's useless land that's being fought over, and you cannot find inheritors. So what you have is an interesting dynamic. So these reinvestment zones are created. And in Houston, that's called a TERS. But here's the interesting thing about TERS. churches have a board, or every reinvestment, no matter what city you're in, has a board. And that board is set by appointees. And when they're set by appointees, what happens is that it creates a quasi-government within the city. That means you have unelected officials who are able to make real decisions with tax dollars from the residents that live in this prescribed zone. Now, I want to repeat that. These are unelected officials who have the ability to utilize the taxes in that particular zone without any oversight. So it's the money of the residents that they use. They control not only the construction that happens in that area to beautify it or to bring more business to the area, but they control the purse. So much so in areas like the Galleria, they have a surplus. And their surplus is used to make investments into the stock market.
Wow.
Now you take something like the third ward can't get any construction. Because if you're a construction company and you're trying to get money, who would have the greater tax pool? The third ward, where the taxes in that particular area are somewhere around 300 a year, or the Galleria, where we're talking about 2,000 plus. I'm sorry. Anybody who wants to make money will be heading over to the Galleria, which is why you always see the Galleria under construction. And no matter what city you're in, you have an area in your city just like that. Wow. And the reason why they're able to sustain themselves is because they can always claim that they are reconstructing something. And that's how they get over.
Throw up a sign. Hey, we're still under construction, right?
Absolutely.
Because they usually close. That's what happens, right?
That was a great point, Alan. That's a great point. Keep in mind, everyone that's listening, no matter what city you're in, reinvestment zones are supposed to become self-sustainable. At some point, reinvestment zones are supposed to end and return back the total taxes, return back to the city's treasury so they can use to do whatever they need to do in order to beautify the entire city. But it doesn't return back to that pool because some of these reinvestment zones stay reinvestment zone for a generation now.
So what I'm hearing is these reinvestment acts have their own government, and whoever that government is, whoever is there at that time, right? And whoever has the gold basically makes the rules, and it keeps on circulating, right?
Absolutely.
Wow. So you want some game? We got it right here. For those of you that just came in the room on Clubhouse, we're talking new urbanism, people, profits, and partnerships. So there's a lot of pieces to this, and we're going to take this in for a landing, that have been around for a while. The biggest thing, and I'm going to take this to Mr. Wasosha, is education. So why, and just real quick, and I won't go too far down in this, when it comes to communities, when it comes to minorities, when it comes to, even because I'm African-American, when it comes to African-Americans, we always want to do things ourselves, right? We never want to pull together, hey, it's mine. But just like Black Wall Street, you can have thriving communities if we just do things together. And instead of having a piece of the pie that's, okay, we can have a huge piece. So Terry, if you could talk to us about why we would partner together and not just do it our own, what that means from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, so I'll start with just economies of scale. The more that you combine your efforts and your resources, the higher you can go. It's a lot for one person to take on, or a small family to take on, to say, you know what, I'm gonna go and find the rules and find the loopholes that will allow me to take advantage of opportunity zones and these tax credits, right? But if you have a community of people from the political aspect, developers, business owners, landowners, just community members all pulling their resources and their mindsets together, that's when you can start to see these economies. And so, Bray mentioned opportunity zone funds. There's $3.2 billion of funding available in the state of Texas. And that's across commercial, residential, agricultural, all of this stuff, right? And so I think what we're trying to do here is bring like-minded individuals together in a way that allows them to pool their mentality, pool their resources together, and then go after these different funds. There's different ESG grants, again, these opportunity zone funds, all of these coming together under one roof, for each community, bringing in influencers and whatnot. That's all going to help, stimulate, organize, and drive some of these communities into, being beneficial for everyone, for all the stakeholders again. And again, the goal here is to find access to all of these funds. If we're not all high net worth individuals or corporations that already have been through the ropes, right? Have already been through this. They understand how to go and make the money flow. That's great for them. But for us, it really is about educating the community, bringing people together and understand that, you don't have to be the CEO of McDonald's to get a dividend from McDonald's, right? You can be an investor, right? There's people making money in the stock market right now from doing nothing. It's called passive income. Why can't we all be passive income beneficiaries for the communities that we live in? I think that's the key to educating the community, is that by coming in here, by living, by bringing your business, by circulating your dollars through these communities, you actually get a stake in that. You get a dividend, you get a return on your investment, and you can build that equity.
Wow. And that's what and he mentioned one thing that's very important. So for those of you that are in the room and would like a guide and to see a visual on how a lot of this comes together, ping Luisa, DM Luisa, and she will send you a guide. But you mentioned something, you mentioned influencers. And influencers are big because we're in the digital age, right? We're in the social media age of LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, right? We may even do a little dance. These fellas look like $1 million. We may do a TikTok video. Mm-hmm. But the influencers that we're talking about are those that can do three things. One is inspire, the ability to inspire. That may be a celebrity, that may be an athlete, that may be an entrepreneur, teacher that's teaching minorities things that they did not know, right? That may be, we're also looking for influence, and that may be from the government, from a governmental relations person, that may be a corporate ambassador, that may be a diversity and inclusion person, that may be somebody that's holds the keys to an ESG fund. And the last, we're looking for impact. So the impact is bigger than us. We're not just doing this. Yes, we can make a little money, but the big thing is we want to have purpose with profit, right? So we want to give equity to those people in that community that never got it, that got their land stripped, talking generations. We won't go too far into that. The other reason, and I promised everybody we dig into this, the reason why the number 270 is important, right? It's kind of a play on the actual, if you go back to generations, there was a thing that was called gerrymandering. And when young African Americans and minorities, they were not given the right to vote, even though they said, hey, right, just little Black History lesson in Black History Month. They said, you can vote, but you really can't, right? And then they started putting education rules and poll tax and all kinds of things. The other thing that they did is they said, okay, now you can vote, but they drew the lines, and that was called gerrymandering, to kind of disenfranchise a lot of the African American and minority people. So what is happening in this plan is these 270 intentional communities that are in opportunity zones, right, are going to put our own minority-owned, whether that's Black-owned, whether that's Boricuas, right, in the place of power, and grow together and give equity to those. And this is not a red, this is not a blue plan, right? Talking political, this is about getting green and equity to minorities. So let's round this up. Let's talk about impact. Mr. Adegore, if you could talk about the impact, right? Because we've seen the profits, we know the money's there now, we're educated on new urbanism. Let's talk about the impact for a second. And I'll go one last round and we'll wrap up here. What does it mean from an impact standpoint for these intentional communities, this community wealth initiative across 270 communities?
It means greater economic development, better housing, higher employment, job creation, higher employment, higher levels of education, better health and human services, transportation, again, not on the individual automobile, but community transportation, and recreation areas that the community takes advantage of to come together.
Phenomenal. Mr. Wasocha, what does this mean as far as impact from a financial standpoint? Because everybody wants to know, okay, let's make money, but what's the impact and what's the financial impact for everybody?
All right. I'll start off with, when we're talking about government grants and these funds, it's other people's money, which is always a benefit when we're talking about development. So you're bringing in partners, you're getting dollars that can redevelop these communities and drive this investment without putting in your own personal funds, right? By supporting these type of communities, we're actually drawing from funds that are already out there, and then we're getting the ROI. Right? As someone that's a community developer, as a partner in one of these things, if you have an interest, a stake in in these communities, you're looking at these what I call community reinvestment trusts, distributing about 90% of the income generated off of these development communities back to the stakeholders, right? So whether you're, again, a mom and pop shop, a local restaurant, a barber shop, or a small family that lives in the community, you're getting regular income based off of the community that you live. And with that, that drives your dollars back into the community, drives the tax revenue, drives beautification. It's a force feeding loop that just continues to drive value for the people in that community.
Man, incredible. Mr. Bray, and so that's some of the things that we've always taught, hey, we want a stake, we want a piece of the pie. Here's a piece of the pie, and the pie is $270 billion, right? We just need to lick the knife. So, Mr. Bray, talk about, if you could tell us, and we'll wrap up here, just the impact of the partnerships. And we've talked about the profits, we've talked about the partnership, the importance of partnering. Let's round off with impact.
Yeah, I think the greatest impact is the opportunity for government and political growth. That in and of itself, to me, empowers not only the states, because they'll benefit, not only the cities, but the actual individuals. And we have been trying to find a way. There's a lot of conversation about wealth and Black wealth and economics, and this is a way for us to actually say we don't really need to create because it's already present.
Come on.
And we can do that, for me, through these interesting collaborations. You have collaborations like the Education, Freedom, and Opportunity Scholarship Act, which is an amazing bill. It's a tax incentive for not only individuals, but businesses to kind of redefine education, not just for K through 12, but for adults. And look that up. It's an incredible act that we can utilize within an intentional community. There's also great partnerships like Toby Hamilton created something called the Health Box, allows for physicians to engage within a community and do it virtually. Everything from health screenings to your annual visit. And that's thinking outside the box. We have a way to establish opportunities and redefine what the relationship between government and the people really should look like. And for me, it's a graduation from welfare state to workforce state. And I think that intentional communities have a way to impact that in a way that other areas, even more than just community, more than just financial, finding the equilibrium between government and the people is something that we have been looking for since the creation of our Americas.
Phenomenal. Gentlemen, I am eternally grateful, and everybody in the clubhouse room, for your time, for your attention, for your knowledge. It is so empowering to have a strong group of minority men give their knowledge to everybody. And for those of you that would like a guide on how this looks, we're wrapping up. DM Luisa, and she can send you that guide. For those of you that are on LinkedIn, just click the button below and we can definitely get you the guide on this plan that we have together. So for the wrapping up, this is New Urbanism, Partnerships, People, and Profits. We're gonna do these in 270 communities, and the only way that we can be successful is with your help. So download the guide, you'll see things come out. We're gonna do a thing on Clubhouse every Wednesday, and you'll see these on LinkedIn. Ping somebody that does not know or you may think is interested in any one of these cities. Let's all pull our money together. Let's all roll together. And remember, whoever has the goal makes the rules. So let's make sure those people are people in our community. So thank you. Y'all have a blessed day. We look forward to seeing y'all all at the top. Thank you.
Thank you.